Hi guys, so I thought it would be useful to do is to kind of film and explain some of the things I do during an initial assessment session, because the way that I approach it, and again if you're familiar with Professor Stuart McGill's work, you'll know the value of doing some thorough investigation beforehand to understand the problem that you're actually dealing with before you start trying to recommend solutions. Because if you don't do that, there's a danger that either what you're going to recommend is going to be useless because it's not actually fixing the problem, and or there's a potential that even with the best intentions, you could be making someone's problem worse because you're not 100% clear on the mechanics of their pain triggers and injury. So with the Professor McGill way of doing it, we basically assess a few different positions, movements. We try and find out what are the things that we know increase pain or create a pain-like symptom, and then we kind of get the client to reverse engineer it to where those positions and movements and habits are occurring day to day, and then work out what are we going to do in terms of movement strategies to avoid that. And if we do that, things start to settle, the pain starts to back away, and then we're going to have far greater success with any exercises and treatment that we want to do to help them go forward. So again, I'll do it as a bit of a voiceover, but in between you can kind of see as we're doing things, I'm talking to Ben the whole time. I'm trying to help him understand what's going on, but also make him aware of when some of these pain triggers are occurring. Again, it doesn't show everything that I do in an assessment, but it just gives you a bit of an overview and just gives you a bit of an idea. So again, the general idea is before we recommend any solutions to a problem, we must assess, don't guess. So before we have a right to give treatments, plans, exercises, we must first understand the problem at hand clearly and then go from there. So what goes on with a sort of a typical initial assessment with clients? So one of the first things I do is give people to take their shoes and socks off, so I can see what their feet are up to, because that can tell me a lot of things about how well their hips and glutes work. And then I just watch them walk initially, just having a look at gait. So what I'm looking at is obviously what the feet and the hips are up to, what their general postures are like, and also generally as a general rule, people that have got upper back issues tend to have very stiff shoulders. So here's Ben here talking about, he's talking about he's got a heel injury as well, which can affect him when he walks. So usually he wears a shoe to try and mitigate that a little bit. I'm just making some notes about that. Okay, so now once I've got them to walk, what happens if I just get people to stand still for a while? Does that bring on pain? Is that a pain trigger, just standing still? Can we change their standing habit, or is it fine? So for Ben, it's actually not too bad. And now what happens when we sit? So even just getting him just to sit and just put that little bit of compression through his spine, already start to get a bit of awareness of kind of pain or uncomfortableness. So what we'll do now is, what happens now if I put you into a slump position? So we bring your legs together and let your posture slump and increase that flexion on the spine. What happens? And for Ben, he could feel that, his increase in pain or his normal injury is. So what happens now if we had a bit of extra compression? So now you're in flexion, you're compressing, you're putting yourself into the bench. What happens? For Ben, that makes it worse. Will that be the case for everybody? Not at all. So again, we put him upright and just to see. So if he compresses in an upright position, it doesn't really change much. But we know him being in a flex position, so being in a rounded slump position, that increases symptoms. So what happens if he leans right side? So right shoulder to right hip, and then pulls in. Is that better or worse? For Ben, that was worse. So I know potentially there's a bad habit with lateral stability on that side. What about now if I go to the left? Was that better or worse? Turns out for Ben, it's not nearly as bad as it is on the right. So again, I've got some clues as what his aggravators could be. So now we've got the heel drop test. So if we put a shock force, a dynamic load through the spine, is it able to bear that shock? Or do you have some loose joints in there that might sort of rattle and give you some problems? But for Ben, in this case, it was fine. Now, just a general compression test, like can Ben be weight loaded in the gym, or do we need to keep him away from weight bearing exercises for a while? So just get him to hold that dumbbell and press it away from him. He started to notice an increase in symptoms. So for him at the moment, he's a bit too sensitive to be loaded. Okay, there was some more other tests, and I didn't catch on camera unfortunately. But what I'm doing here is once we've had a good thorough assessment, then I start looking at what exercise we can give to people. So here I'm just showing him how to get down to the floor in a back sparing way, and then bit of roll onto his back to better do the exercises. So what we don't want to do is risk provoking the back with pain just by trying to get you up and down to do your exercises. So here I'm going to teach them how to roll, so making sure hip and shoulder move at the same time and using the strategy to get up and down from all fours. And now here we're looking at, because when we tested Ben, we found that if you had a little bit of brace on in the load test, it actually helped him. So him learning to use a brace properly is probably going to be a very beneficial thing. So here I'm just using my fingers to kind of, stab his obliques to get him to switch those on. So he has to fight my fingers, but still able to breathe. Once he's got a feel for that, then I'll actually take him through an actual Mcgill Curl, which is basically doing that same brace motion and being able to breathe, but you just happen to lift shoulders, elbow and head just a little bit off the floor and take 3 deep breaths as you do so. So here I'm just trying to emphasize doing a small movement, making sure he keeps his brace on. And then just going to correct his head a little bit. So see, he's a little bit of awareness of his chin's a bit off, so I'm just going to correct it a little bit. There we go. Even that's probably still a little bit too high off the floor, but not bad for a first go.